Hey, what's up? It's Tuhu. The poll for this video was for a 5-star saber between Muramasa, Ibuki-doji, and Dioscuri, and the patrons wanted the husbando, so here you go, a guide on how to play the poster boy of fate, totally not Shiro. Senji Muramasa is a limited 5-star saber who debuted during this year's New Year's, so 2023 for NA or 2021 for JP. He's primarily a farming saber who arts loops with the help of Castoria, but the old man has a few tricks up his sleeve to help him function outside of that as an arts crit saber with some assistance. And again, he is definitely not Shiro. At level 90, he's got 14,680 HP, 11,373 attack, and 0.59% offensive MP charge. He's man attribute and chaotic neutral with a 2A 2B deck that's got a 2-hit quick, 3-hit arts, 3-hit busters, and 5-hit extra. He doesn't have any notable traits, as in they're all traits that you'd expect him to have, with maybe the exception of living human, but as far as I'm aware, there's nothing in the game yet that deals more damage against living humans specifically, so it's just something that all, or at least most of the pseudo-servants have, since they're using actual Nasuverse characters as vessels, you know, blah 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 lore shit. His first skill is a projection buff that gives him 30 to 50% triple color buffs for one turn. It also increases his star weight by 500 to 1000% for one turn, and produces 5 to 15 stars on a 7 to 5 turn cooldown. His second skill lets him ignore invul for one turn, increases his crit damage against enemies who specifically have an evade or invul by 50 to 100% for one turn, increases star gen by 50 to 100% for 3 turns, and increases his regular crit damage by 50 to 100% for 3 turns on an 8 to 6 turn CD. And his third skill is a 30 to 50% battery that also grants him a special blaze buff that lets him charge his MP gauge by 5 to 10% whenever he's normal attacking for 3 turns on an 8 to 6 turn CD. His passives increase his magic resist, arts performance, and damage against enemies with the king trait. One of them also slightly increases his party's crit damage while he's on the field too, and his third append is anti-caster. His MP is a 3-hit arts AoE that first increases his MP damage by 10% for 3 turns and removes all enemies' offensive buffs first, then deals defense piercing damage to them. Its overcharge increases his arts performance by 10 to 30% for 3 turns depending on overcharge, which also activates first before the MP does damage. Let's address the elephant in the room right now. Demon Blade Muramasa is first and foremost an arts looping saber. He's got an AoE NP and a 50% battery, and his MP gives him both MP damage and arts performance buffs every time he uses it, both of which last for 3 turns. This means that in a standard looping context, the NP is stacking those buffs again and again, which gives Muramasa better and better damage and NP gen the further into a fight. Another way to put it is that his NP naturally scales his performance up as enemies get more HP, when most loopers don't get this perk unless their own MPs do something similar, or you plug another support servant in to buff them for the third wave specifically. And that's ignoring his first skill, which is already a huge power spike for his third wave damage, since it's basically a 50% arts mana burst for his NP. But he's not just a great arts looper, he's one of only 2 sabers who can realistically arts loop at all in FGO, even on JP, him and Summer Tomoe. And Summer Tomoe infamously has a few problems arts looping, and oftentimes needs some help doing so with either plug suit supports or grail stats. Funnily enough, on the topic of comparing these two as arts loopers, both of them have similar offensive MP charge stats, 3-hit arts NPs, and a 1-turn arts buff for wave 3. It's just that Muramasa's got so much more shit to work with that ultimately makes him work much more smoothly as a looper than Summer Tomoe does. On top of that, they're both limited servants, and now that FGO has pity, there's no more solo 4-star rate up rotations outside of banners that only have 1 4-star servant on rate up anyways, so it's almost better just to try to roll for Muramasa if you want an arts looping saber and you somehow aren't swayed by Summer Tomoe's tits and thighs. While he's undoubtedly a great looper, keep in mind that we do have Koinskaya Light and Oberon on NA now, so if you have everything you need, you can just bust a reload much more easily, since your choice of saber DPSs is wider and much more accessible, with both Artoria and the kid she refuses to pay child support for, Mordred, are buster reloaders and they're permanent. And of course Ibuki is still great too. Outside of arts looping though, Black Mesa's second role is an arts crit saber, since his skills give him a star bomb, star weight buff, star gen buff, and crit damage buff. Uniquely, Muramasa has a specific crit damage buff that only activates against enemies who have an active evasion or invul up when he hits them. So with all these things working together, if you see an enemy pop their evade or invul with your Muramasa having crits on deck, it's time to pile bunker that son of a bitch like you're playing AC6. And because arts crits double the MP charge that servants get, this means Muramasa is also a natural MP spammer, so he can throw out his MP a lot to supplement his damage output. Hilariously, his third skill helps him with this because of the blaze buff that gives him up to 10% charge per normal attack, so if he does a full brave chain with it, he's getting a whopping 40% extra charge. Ideally, you use his third skill on a turn when he's got a brave chain on deck, and using his battery gets him his NP, so that way he can make a ton of progress towards his next NP even if he doesn't have arts cards to follow up. Neo Kamimura's most obscure trick is actually when he's looping. If your Muramasa isn't quite strong enough to finish off the third wave boss, what you can do is pop his S2 for the star gen buff specifically on waves 1 or 2. Normally, in FGO, arts cards, or arts MPs for that matter, can't generate stars, but with his S2's 100% star gen buff, Muramasa can make his NP generate stars, so he should get around like 9 or 10 stars from wave 2 going into wave 3. You then pop his S1 on wave 3, which you were probably going to do anyway, and if you get a Muramasa card, he's got his 100% crit damage buff on deck with his S1's projection buff and star bomb for a better chance to finish the job. His biggest weaknesses are a lack of any hard defense skills of his own and his star weight buff duration. He just has no sustain of his own in general, so he's entirely reliant on his teammates and your mystic code to keep him alive when he gets smacked in the face. His star weight buff also has a couple problems. For one, it only lasts for one turn, so on its own he can't take full advantage of his own 3-turn crit damage buff unless you make so many stars that star weight buffs just stop mattering. For example, by running double 20-30 on your supports or spamming Merlin's MP, which JP players apparently don't think is busted as fuck. And two, it's tied to his projection buffs, which also only last for one turn, so most of the time you're gonna have to deal with the opportunity cost of using either the triple color buffs or the star weight buff and the star bomb, but not both at the same time. So ideally you're gonna have to give Muramasa a star weight buffing CE or a teammate who can give star weight buffs like Lancer Brynhilda, so that way you can dedicate Muramasa's S1 to being an MP buffer when you need it. So if you can support him properly with sustain and hard defense, so basically throw Tamamo Caster and Castoria in there with double 20-30 and call it a day. What do you mean you don't have 2 copies of 20-30? Muramasa has the power to slap bitches out of the game like the arts Chad that he is. Now for craft essences. For looping, take whatever your strongest looping CE is. If Muramasa needs more MP gen for some reason, remember to take 2K4 Mystic Code or Magical Girl Sapphire if you have that. For arts crits or boss killing, the best CE is Hot Sand since it gives both star weight and more crit damage, but take whatever CE that also buffs star weight that you have, like Star at Camelot or Dance with Rounds. Seal Designation Enforcer and Fradrak are both permanent CE options and full attack too. Leisurely Strolling is also an option, but not ideal since it splits stats. And if you're on the JP server, Labyrinth of the Last Flowers in Bloom seems like the perfect CE for him. If you already have star weight covered with a teammate or double 20-30 or something, another ending is great, especially if you have it leveled. Or other crit damage or arch CEs that you have, like Atumbra, Covering Fire, or Formal Craft. NA now also has Projection Loading, which is the new perma 4-star CE that gives 50% charge and 10% arts buff at limit break and has full attack. Muramasa's own max spawn CE increases his crit damage by 30% and gives all his normals a 30% chance to produce 5 crit stars. It supports his arts crit roll pretty well, and the chance to gain more stars with normals is nice too to supplement his star gen, but as usual, the shitty 50-50 stats that all bond CEs have holds him back, so stick to normal CEs instead. In summary, Muramasa is the premier arts saber looper of FGO and can be a strong boss killer with arts crits that can make even Super Orion jealous if you give him the right tools for the job, especially when enemies fuck around and pop their hard defense skills in front of him and find out what 200% crit damage feels like. However, he's not the easiest to use since he has no hard defense skills or sustain of his own, so you'll definitely need to babysit him a fair bit to make sure he doesn't get his own ass slapped too hard. Or in other words, let him cook, just not too much. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more FGO videos, and check out the Patreon if you want to participate in the poll for the next FGO how-to. Also, check out the stream, twitch.tv/ToeSniper98. I'll be streaming a lot of my Summer 6 farming once we get 90+. Thanks for watching. Peace.